Quick 15-second promo for Purple Stride in April. Go!
purplestride.org.
/Team Trek.
We're a team! We're a team!
There's our leader, Kitty, our vision of hope.
Sleigh bells ring. Are you listening? In the lane, snow is glistening. A beautiful sight. We're happy tonight. Walking in a winter wonderland. Gone away is the bluebird. Here to stay is a new bird. He sings a love song as we go along. Walking in a winter wonderland.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Doctorman.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the Inglorious
Trexperts Holiday Special with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Hello.
And we're talking... Hello. We're talking merchandise. Something you know a little bit about.
This is the command center of the USS Enterprise from the Star Trek collection. Assembly required.
Hey, look! There's Captain Kirk and Commander Decker and Officer Ilea.
There's also the Vulcan shuttle with docking port. You can put in Scotty and Spock and Dr. McCoy. Bridge, shuttle, and action figures each sold separately.
Wow, the crew goes back and forth.
Vulcan shuttle, USS Enterprise bridge, and figures all sold separately by Mego.
You know, we're if you were looking at Rob right now, you see he's in his observatory, and he's surrounded by Blu-rays and DVDs and all kinds of merchandise.
Wow.
What are some of the highlights there in the observatory, Rob?
Well, if I were to mention some of the things that are on this list, but I have, there's so many different iterations of starships. I mean, you just never know. I can just reach and pick up a starship.
Oh, look at that! I see more exciting. I see Prince and the
that
Time.
was my 6th scale supergroup.
Yeah.
So you got Jimi Hendrix, you got Bowie, you got Freddie Mercury, you got Prince, you got John Lennon, you got Elvis, and you got Eric Draven the Crow.
They are the world.
Space oddities.
And it can't rain all the time.
2001 toys and models, you know. There's so much stuff. Random, you know, just I got
We can't hear you when you turn.
I got random models of like Space.
Oh, look at the Eagle Transporter.
Of many different. I don't even know why I bought this by accident. I meant to buy something else.
You
but
don't know why.
Rob accidentally buys model kits.
You know,
How do you not know why?
Look,
it's fantastic.
He swallowed a fly.
Ed 209.
Nice.
Oh, look at that. That's gorgeous. That's Ed 209 from RoboCop.
Yeah, which doesn't work. I don't know why anyone would want a toy of this, but here it is.
Try aiming a gun at it.
Where do you get all those wonderful toys? Japan.
The internet.
I've got Eric. I've got Tyler Durden.
Wow.
Over there.
You got Kal-El, Last Son of Krypton.
Better.
Oh, look at that. It's Jor-El.
Jor-El.
There you go.
Jor-El. In the original.
Incredibly rare hot toy from 2006.
Welcome to
Krypton. It was made
Krypton.
for Superman Returns, but it was not released in the United States.
I was able to get one of those too. And
that's awesome.
I also got a swizzle stick that was made out of clear plastic that works exactly for his baton.
How about this, Mark? The original.
Oh, look at that. The Japanese laser disc. I'm going to pronounce it like Audie. Laser disc.
The color timing of this is the color timing they use for everything else. Whenever they make the other stuff for the illegal 4K or 2K.
That was the first widescreen edition of the movie.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
I don't know why.
This is amazing. This is amazing. You know, it's funny because if somebody broke into your house, 99% of robbers would be like, what the fuck? Why we came into the wrong house? But there's 1% that would be like, this is the greatest robbery of all time.
Yeah,
they would like stop robbing your house just to talk to you about all the shit they wanted to steal.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's just a mess. There's just so much stuff in here. But
you moved a couple of months ago, so you still have, it's amazing you have as much out as you do.
I'm actually shifting everything, and I keep moving stuff around. So it's
with your mind.
Yeah, it's coming to the end of it. Like I've got to stop collecting stuff. The only thing I'm going to keep buying is movies. I think movies and books.
Oh, interesting. Because that's I mentioned this on the show a couple of weeks ago. Gab said to me, Gabrielle, a good friend Gabrielle, she said, up until 50, you spend your life accumulating things, and after 50, you spend your life getting rid of things.
Yeah,
that's not the plan.
See, here's the problem. They're making it's in terms of collectibles, they're making some of the coolest collectibles ever made now.
Yes.
And it's like there's a company called Jazz Inc. That they do a 1/6 Batmobile. They're doing a 1/6 pod from 2001.
Wow. That's wild.
Come on. You got to have that.
5 more of those and you could actually have a pod from 2001.
Jazz Hands Inc. Wow.
But but I think Gab is right. You think this stuff was supposed to inspire us to do work. Having these collectibles, being surrounded by collectibles was what we needed to inspire us to do our own works. So hopefully somebody would make something from something we did.
Well, there you go.
That's the dream.
But I keep buying things.
I do have to say that a company is making the Exorcist 3 shears that I designed.
Dude,
so
really?
That's pretty close.
Where the hell do I get those?
They aren't out yet. Hopefully next year.
That's not
okay, because
that's as good as it gets, right?
That is absolutely. I don't collect a lot of stuff, but I would absolutely buy that and then kill a nurse with them.
Wow, that's going to go on the box.
That's
a blurb that's going to go on the box.
Don't kill anybody.
Are they going to be made out of metal?
Yes.
Oh, dude,
the head of the company was just on Adam Savage on his podcast, and he was showing all these stuff that they made from Batman, and they made one of the grapplers from the original 89 Batman.
Zorn from Farpoint?
No. And they do amazing work. So I don't know when they're going to announce it. I probably have ruined
up the gun.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm very excited.
Well, me too. And Mark likes to say very few things in life are actually iconic, but those shears are in fact really iconic. Yeah.
I hate that people keep saying iconic for things.
I know. They're doing it everywhere now. I can't unsee it.
Everywhere. Dude. I literally, right? Everything is described as iconic. Yeah. Every press release,
everything is iconic,
every movie,
iconic.
I was like, but it's not.
Yeah.
That's not what iconic means. It's like after the Alanis Morissette song, everyone was using ironic the wrong way.
So not ironic or iconic.
Right. Nothing with eyes. Just stay away from the I words completely, except for idiot. That I can't get enough of. So anyway, it's nice to see you guys back for the holiday special.
We're back.
Why do we collect things? Why do we have this merchandise? Rob, you alluded to it a little earlier. Ashley, why you probably, you're probably the least collector of all of us, although you collect comic books and stuff. So you are a collector. What is it about merchandise that makes us want to possess it?
You know what? I think when there are two ways of looking at this. I think number one, we've all known each other for a very long time. And we've all seen Rob's collection of everything up close and personal. And I think there are collectors in the world like Rob who just love everything with their whole heart, and they just want to have it and look at it and be with it and make sweet, sweet love to it. And then there are collectors like me on the other end of the spectrum who get very into like a very specific kind of thing. So for me, it's my comics, but it's not just my comics. It's I've talked about this before, my complete collection of everything Batman going back to 1985. If I collect action figures,
you even own Val Kilmer. It's amazing.
Yeah, I do.
I can't just hangs out of your house.
He's in my house right now. He's holding up the foundation. It's he's here.
Did you when I collect action figures, Kilmer?
I'm sorry?
Did you get the Hot Toys Val Kilmer?
I did not get the Hot Toys Val Kilmer. I mean, honestly, the thing that I was looking for at Comic-Con this last July was I was looking for the McFarlane Toys Michael Keaton Batman. And what I really wanted on top of that was the Lego Batman Returns Batcave. Like, I'm really into stuff like that is super honking specific. And yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like, if I can't find it, I don't just kind of grab stuff. I do, however, also have this weird obsession with, and it's not weird because he's awesome, but I got a weird obsession with Ultraman. So if I see Ultraman action figures, I have to buy them.
Do you have a beta capsule?
I do not have a beta capsule, but I would absolutely buy a beta capsule.
Of course you would.
Damn right I would. Right? I think it just impacted me as a child. Like I was so traumatized by that time that by having lots of Ultramans, I can undo his end.
Right.
You know? So
I have a theory about collecting.
Okay.
When we're kids, we collect stuff that helps us imagine that we're grown up. When we're adults, we collect the same things to help us imagine that we're young again.
Wow, he's like Socrates without the little boys. That's really amazing.
Well, I mean, you know what's strange? Like when I was a kid, I still to this day, I loved building model spaceships because you wanted to. It was to have a representation of something that to be able to hold it and look at it from different angles allowed you to understand it better. Like the geography of the Enterprise, for instance, to have a model kit of the Enterprise was to look around. You saw it on TV, but you know, when you look at things at different angles, things are elongated or depending on the size of the lens but when you actually put it together and paint it and do whatever, you get a much better understanding. Like the Millennium Falcon. I remember the first time I bought the MPC model of the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, I didn't really understand because the way they shot that model, it was hard to grasp what it actually looked like.
Yeah.
Because it was, you know, it's basically a hamburger with two pylons in the front. But until you actually pick it up and look around, you're like, oh, because some of those shots, like when you see the rear grills, it's like, how does that work? Because you never saw in the movie, you never got to see it like holistically. So I think I always loved spaceship models to play with them and help me understand them better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Rob, did you see, I'm sure you got this. I have very fond memories because Rob is clearly the biggest collector of all of us. And
I don't know, Darren's pretty big.
Nope.
Rob used to have these great late night parties at his house. When, you know, after a late night partying, everybody would go back to Rob's house and he'd have Barbarella on the TV and be playing Air and stuff.
How did you get that early?
Hey, it's me. And so what I'm showing is this gorgeous 4K Barbarella.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, that was like the staple of Rob's apartment at the time during the free enterprise era.
My wife at the time too would put on Barbarella, and then we'd play like you said, techno music, whether it's Daft Punk or Air or something, would play over that. That is a gorgeous set that came out. It comes out tomorrow.
My God, it is stunning, and you know, a relic of a more civilized age.
Yeah, 100%.
Have you showed it to Isaac yet?
What?
Have you showed it to Isaac yet?
No, I mean, I you know, look, I just showed him Blade Runner. We went to the Arrow 2 weeks ago, and he absolutely loved it. He absolutely loved it. I think he loves Blade Runner more than I do, which is fantastic. I mean, it was, I kept looking over, like, is he bored? Does he know what's going on? I was just wondering. And then at the end, he goes, that movie is amazing. And I said, wow. He said, and he was like, I wish Coruscant had looked like that. I was just like, nice. I approve. So that was exciting. That was a win.
Well, wait till he finds out what an Orgasmatron is.
Well, he's a collector. I mean, it's funny. He was cat sitting for Dan Weber's cats, and he had his eye on this General Zod from Superman 2 that he really wanted. And every time Dan would call and see how the cats are doing, he said, the cats are great. So is General Zod. And Dan, to his credit, when he came back from his trip, gave Isaac the General Zod. He was very, very happy.
That's very happy. That's a happy story.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
That's one way to get a General Zod.
That's right.
Yeah. Because I remember at Comic-Con, we were looking all over for General Zod. Couldn't find it. He was very disappointed. And so when Dan gave him the General Zod, he was just...
Well, you have to look in the Phantom Zone.
Delighted. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, but today we're not talking about Barbarella. We're not talking about General Zod or Jor-El or Krypton. We're talking about the best Star Trek merchandise, the top 10 best Star Trek merchandise, because of course this is the fourth installment of our 10-part 10 for 10 Star Trek top 10 lists. We've done the top 10 seasons to usher in seasons greetings. We've done the best adversaries, top 10 adversaries. And last week we did the top 10 books, fiction and nonfiction. Technically it was really the top 20, but who's counting?
Yeah.
So this week it's the top 10 best Trek merchandise. And to kick us off, we look at Rob Burnett at number 10. I'm sorry, we don't look at Rob Burnett.
I was going to say,
we go look at Darren R. Doctorman, my illustrious co-host, the man with the plan, and
the other one that looks like Rob Burnett.
Grappler is coming out as his own piece of merchandise.
Grappler Zorn is coming out.
So, Darren, tell us what we're looking at for number 10.
Well, back in the 70s, a little company called Power Records made a series of book and record sets that were absolutely amazing. They had all of the Planet of the Apes movies. They had a bunch of Marvel hero stories. They had, they had Space 1999 episodes. It was truly amazing. And among these offerings were a bunch of Star Trek stories.
Captain's log, stardate 5466.9. The Enterprise is in orbit around the outpost colony world of Ribble 2 on orders from the Federation Agriculture Division to try and find a solution to the destructive plague of Dranzes, which wipes out 70 to 90% of the grain crop every 6th year. A landing party of Dr. McCoy, First Officer Spock, and myself has beamed down to the Ribolian surface to survey the problem firsthand. Mr. Newt Henderson of the Ribolian Settlers League has taken us in hand.
That are, maybe 10 or 15 minutes long, dramatized with actors no one had ever heard of. There are, There's about 16 or 17 records that some are duplicated, some are repackaged to be in the Star Trek the Motion Picture mode, because the stories didn't really change. They just changed the uniforms. But they are odd in a wonderful kind of way. None of the actors sound like any of the actors from the TV show. I think a bunch of them were written by Alan Dean Foster. I think. I'm not
correct,
sure.
Sir. Some of them were written by Alan Dean Foster.
And comic artists drew the pages of the comic books that were connected.
Yeah, Neil Adams and
a bunch of heavyweights.
Russ Heath and a whole bunch of great comic book artists contributed to the comics.
What I learned later was that Power Records was headquartered very close to where I used to live in New Jersey. And so they had connection to, number one, all the New York actors to come in and record for them. And
they weren't in Neverland?
No. and all the comic book artists to do the work too. So it was a great sort of extra Star Trek thing that was around in the time of need.
Why is it everything we don't understand is always called a thing?
Because things are important. It's really great. When we would go to my favorite retail haunt, Two Guys, that we will hear of more later. Two Guys in Union, New Jersey. They had a full collection of these Power Records and a whole section on the Star Trek albums, which honestly I never got. Because I heard one of them and I hated it. Because it wasn't Star Trek. It wasn't the Star Trek that I was used to, which is, pretty much how I react these days to things. But it's it represented an emptiness in fandom that needed something to fill it, and it was there. And it's funny because the rest of the Power Records offerings are so good that I still have all the Planet of the Apes ones memorized because I listen to them so often. So as a Star Trek fan, I think they missed the boat a little bit for me. But that doesn't make them any less of a valuable addition to the top 10 best Star Trek merchandise.
They were like the gold key of Star Trek stories. They were kind of wackadoodle, but they were fun, and they filled the gap because we were so, in the 70s, so anxious to have any kind of new Star Trek storytelling. Yeah. And this was it. And the comics were actually pretty good. Yeah.
The artwork was good, and the stories were interesting. They weren't Star Trek, but they were science fiction, and they were interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Really great way to start us off with the Peter Pan Power Records Star Trek albums.
Say that 3 times fast. Peter Pan
Power Records. I'm not going to.
Peter Pan Power Records.
And something that you can still pick up on eBay and enjoy the wonderful adventures of the Starship Enterprise.
And they're all out there, I believe, on YouTube. You can listen to them.
Or on YouTube. Yeah. That's right. Or vinyl is back in. A lot of these kids are listening to vinyl. Maybe they're going to pick up the record. I don't know.
The kids aren't going to pick up the record.
How stupid is that vinyl is back? It's like just, you can listen to lossless music. You have the
entire world of music is available to us at the touch of a button in perfect quality.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
These kids are getting out the record players.
I know, it's insane. And then plus you still got like people like La La Land putting out these amazing CDs and Perez and all these guys, and then they want their vinyl. These kids, it's like, seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know it looks cool rotating, but I was so happy when CDs replaced vinyl. Like I didn't have to get up.
It was magical. You didn't have to take that round.
You
didn't have to take that round brush and wet it and run it along the record to take all the dust off of it. It was
going to sound strange. But I actually do kind of miss vinyl, but for the weirdest reason.
Tell us, Ashley. We would expect you to have a weird reason.
Because there was something about the smell of the record when it was being played, and it's like I don't know if it was the dust or if it's just like the friction or like whatever it is. Something very comforting.
Well,
about
how about this?
vinyl.
Turn on Spotify and smell your record.
Damn right.
Smell the glove.
Smell-o-vision.
Smell the glove.
Yeah. Just try that, Apple. Screw you.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. Rob, where are you on this whole vinyl resurgence?
I always hated vinyl when it was new. When I collected a lot of records, and I hated the fact that every time I played it, like with VHS tapes, there was more dropouts, but with vinyl, more clicks and pops.
Yep.
And I used to try and clean my records to no avail.
Totally.
Even on especially on a brand new record.
Yeah, an American vinyl was terrible.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was a little older when I was buying a lot of 12-inch remixes and foreign, when I really got into like British music like Depeche Mode and New Order and stuff in the early 80s, I was haunting Tower Records to buy. I would only buy UK or Japanese vinyl because it was so much better than American garbage vinyl. And I used to hate it when I was forced to buy, like, I couldn't find foreign soundtracks, so I was always buying soundtracks, but they were domestic vinyl. I'm like, this is garbage.
Not so the quite idea domesticated.
The idea that, although I have to say, to be honest, I might have a few recent vinyl releases here.
Of course you do.
I don't want to admit to that, but I do.
I got rid of all my vinyl except for the ones that had really great album covers, which I framed. So you will still find my Star Trek The Motion Picture LP from 79 framed, but I don't listen to it. I listen to my La La Land CD.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
now they've got those great, those great frames that you can just open up and slide in and out of things. I've got laser discs in those frames, and they're great.
That's the only thing it's worth doing with your laser discs.
I put General Zod and his 2 cohorts in it.
There you go.
Fly them around the apartment.
Yeah.
Okay. That brings us to number 9, Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, okay. For anyone who lived through this era, the mid-'70s, the Mego Corporation hit hard with first their line of superhero figures, world's greatest superheroes. And the first ones I remember getting were Superman and Batman, and the Batman who had the removable cowl. But soon after,
Which you should not remove.
Mego got 2 licenses. Now, some people might say that they were licenses because these live action things became animated things, but that's not entirely true. They got 2 huge licenses. One was Planet of the Apes, and the other was Star Trek.
Yep.
And for me, I went bananas for both of these Mego lines. Both the Planet of the Apes line and the Star Trek action figure line were great. The play sets they had were great, especially Planet of the Apes. I mean, what I didn't understand was it was the first time, like when the Star Trek figures came out and they made the Star Trek bridge, the bridge looked nothing like the bridge of the Enterprise. I mean, it had a a navigation console and a captain's chair, but it was printed. They would print these things on cardboard and then seal them in vinyl, clear vinyl. So you'd open it up and unfold it all. But I'm like, why can't you just make this look like the Enterprise? Like, why does it? And it was all drawn, like the wall. It was, I don't know where this artwork came from. It didn't matter. I liked it anyway.
I loved it.
But then what Mego did for Star Trek, they took it even further and they made these role-playing toys.
Right.
And they made a phaser with like this reflector, you could fire them. And it was an interactive electronic phaser. But the coolest things that they made were the communicators and the command console.
Let's contact Steve. Check.
It's the Star Trek Command Communications Console for use with the Star Trek communicator sold separately. Each uses one 9-volt battery, not included. The Command Communications Console has a multicolor phaser light screen. You can broadcast up to 1,300 feet, and there's a Morse code key that you can buzz out loud or broadcast to the communicators. The Star Trek Command Communications Console. Communicators sold separately in pairs from Mego.
Yeah, they work together, theoretically.
Together, yeah, theoretically. And the communicators looked, I mean, they were walkie-talkies, but they had a flip-up top like the communicators did.
And an antenna.
They had a big antenna. They looked like walkie-talkies, but they were pretty cool. And I actually had them, but they worked for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they didn't work anymore. But I don't know why. Like they got jostled or banged or whatever. But it didn't matter because even when they didn't work, you could still use them as communicators, even though they were oversized. Walk around,
play with them,
you're playing, And then the command console looked vaguely similar to something you would find, in the auxiliary control room of the Enterprise. And it was supposed to interact with these communicators. To be honest, I never had the control console because they were really hard to find. And sometimes regionally, like I'm from Seattle, there's nowhere to get it unless you bought it out of the back of the Sears catalog. It was really hard to get, or Captain's Company from the back of Famous Monsters or something. Right. It was really hard to get those kinds of things.
Not as hard as we were led to believe, because I had one.
Oh, yeah, I didn't have one. But
I loved it.
You lived in New York, man. You could get anything in New York.
That's true.
But these were great because they felt...
And my father probably did get it off the back of a truck.
They felt legitimate somehow.
Yeah.
Unlike people that see that helmet with the Star Trek on it.
The Spock helmet, yeah.
The Spock helmet that they made canon on Lower Decks or whatever.
Stupid.
They felt legitimate. Like when you had something in your hand that was interactive. And to have something like that when you were a kid, it was really amazing. The only other thing that they had a model kit of the exploration set of a communicator, a tricorder, and a phaser. But
we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, they walk into a bar.
They were undersized. These were electronic working doodads. And they vaguely looked like they were supposed to look in Star Trek. So it was easy to imagine that you had something unique.
I just liked on the front of the lid, it had a circular aluminum plate that had the delta on it and the word Star Trek.
Yeah,
that is the key for something that is pandering to a kid.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you had to live with that because everything that Mego made, when they made a little Batmobile for their figures, it said Batman on the side of the Batmobile.
That's right.
They had to, because they wouldn't just give you, as a kid, a black. And the first thing any kid worth their salt would do would take that sticker off.
Yeah.
You know, and then you'd leave the sticking behind, and it was annoying. And you'd try to get your dad to help you take that off. But it had to go. You couldn't do that with a communicator.
And you'd try and get red fingernail polish and paint the red stripes on the Batmobile.
Oh, yeah.
Never worked well.
The communications console said Star Trek Communications Console on it. It's like, oh, okay.
Kevin, this is Scott. Kevin, this is Scott. Come in, over.
I remember.
This is Star Trek responding.
You know what was really upsetting about toys when I was a kid, and
they didn't come to life and kill your enemies?
No, I hated the fact that you could tell that they thought kids were stupid.
Yes.
And like, if you bought a Star Trek command console like this, the whole point was it was supposed to be for role playing.
Yeah.
That you could immerse yourself in the world of the 23rd century. But when they put the word Star Trek on something, they ruined that entirely.
Yes.
Unlike,
it should be on the packaging, not on the merchandise.
No, and especially, I mean, a lot of the stuff came out before, but I think the communicators came out in 76, maybe. Anything that was post Franz Joseph with the technical manual and the blueprints, it was like, you people are messing this up.
Right.
You know, you've got to make here. You're making something that you're supposed to role play, but they didn't believe, or they thought kids didn't understand that they were role playing Star Trek.
They thought kids were as stupid as the parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, it's crazy because back then they thought the kids were stupid, and kids weren't stupid then.
No,
now the kids are stupid.
Yeah, and the thing was, you think about, like, can I take this off? Can I take the word Star Trek off the command console? Because if anyone worth their salt was thinking about it, they'd be like, there's no such thing as Star Trek in the world of Star Trek. Star Trek is the name of a TV show we watch. It's not the name of what's going on. There's nothing called Star Trek in the 23rd century.
Put it on the box, not on the merchandise. Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, I'll tell you, the communications console was really cool because if you like turned off the lights, like it would start to, it flashed and had all these cool patterns.
Like a little light
and everything.
show.
What? It was a light show.
Like a little light show.
Yeah. And it also had the red alert. You would hit the button and it would hit the red alert. So, you know, you could have a fort, or you could be playing, you know, Star Trek. And then, like, if people tried to invade your territory, you could hit the red alert. And it was great. I mean, I remember, like, late at night, you would listen for people who were on walkie-talkies, but it didn't just pick up the Star Trek walkie-talkies. Picked up any walkie-talkies on that frequency.
Right. Channel 12, I believe.
Yeah. So it was, not to be confused with Channel 11. And it was awesome. It was really, it's the kind of stuff that lit the fire of our imagination, as goofy as these things may have been. And obviously there've been a lot better communicators made over the years, much more screen accurate communicators. Yep. Yet there was something about those dopey Mego communicators that still resonate for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of communicators,
speaking of dopey,
we're going to go. No, we're going to Daren Dochterman with number 8.
Number 8. Well, as Rob mentioned a little bit about Mego and their phaser target game, which was terrible because the phasers looked nothing like the phasers from the show.
You couldn't bring down a Klingon ship with a phaser one.
Well,
you know, it's true. Just, you can't do it. It's not powerful enough.
Well, it kind of look like them. It's just having
when you're right, you're right. And Remco made a phaser that was diabolical. It was thick and chunky and terrible. It had little inserts that you would put in it that would project shapes of the Enterprise and Klingon ships and stars. It was terrible.
God. Yeah.
Cut to around 45 years later, and this wonderful little company called the Wand Company, which got its start from making Harry Potter wands that were remote controls for the TV. The Wand Company comes out with a perfect phaser, taken from scans of Greg Jean's original Hero phaser. This was absolute perfection. Master Replicas had come out with a phaser a couple years earlier, also patterned after Greg Jeans, and it was made of metal and it was very heavy. The wand company was just as light as you wanted it to be, but not too light. And it was made in such a way where you could remove the phaser one, and that was functional. I believe it had some remote control operations to it, but no one ever used it. The great thing was that the little selector knob on the back could have you select different sounds that it would make, different light patterns from the emitter. And the great thing was, the phaser one, you could move the wheel on it. The sight would come up, and you could look through the sight and press the button on the bottom, and it made the phaser sound. And the when you put phaser one into its holder on phaser two, the emitter nozzle pushed out just a little bit. It's perfect. It is that phaser that we saw in the making of Star Trek book, where it had the insides open, but it was perfect and it worked just like you'd want it to. And I love the one that I have, and it comes in an amazing sort of case that has not Star Trek, it has Starfleet on it, because it is all in universe. And you open it up and you take the phaser out in its components and you connect everything up. You put the power pack handle, plug it in and twist, and it's exactly the way it should be. And it is the perfect phaser. And it's really hard to find nowadays.
Really hard, very expensive, but it's beautiful.
That's
great. I love it. I would run around with it all the time if I could.
I don't think we're going to have on our list, but because obviously this was a short-lived company, and I know you worked for them for a little while, and it wasn't a great experience. But the Icons line of communicators and phasers and tricorders were pretty awesome at the time. Klingon disruptors.
They were awesome at the time. They didn't. They made the Klingon disruptors. They didn't get to the phasers and communicators.
No, I have them. I have them right here.
Well, other people didn't get them.
Oh, well, I got a phaser. I got a tricorder, communicator, and I got rid of the Klingon disruptor at some point.
I still have the Klingon disruptor somewhere.
Oh, well, maybe I'll trade you.
No, that's not.
Oh, maybe I won't.
But something that isn't on the list yet, but Wand Company also came out with the perfect communicator. That is a Bluetooth extension of your cell phone. And when your phone rings, it makes the boop, boop sound, and you flick it open. You can answer your calls with a speakerphone. It is perfect. It is great. I have 2 of them, and they are awesome.
Of course you do.
That doesn't surprise any of us. Okay, fantastic choice at number 8.
Because there were 2 Mego communicators in the pack, so I had to have 2.
So it brings us to number 7 and Ashley Edward Miller.
So number 7 is, you know what? It's a gift that keeps on giving, because if you can think of the gift, you can probably find it in the Playmates Star Trek action figure set.
Computer subspace transmission to Starfleet Command from Enterprise. Stardate 45481.4. It's a single blast. Source unknown. Lieutenant Worf checks weapon systems. Captain Picard orders full shields from Lieutenant LaForge in engineering. Suddenly there is an alien presence on the ship. It's one of the Borg, a hostile robotic life form. Commander Riker returns phaser fire.
Star Trek, the next generation action figures from Playmates.
These guys went cuckoo bananas. They've got figures from essentially every show, from squirrely moments inside of every show, from the squirreliest secondary characters inside of every show. Like, you want Captain Kirk dressed up for a piece of the action? They got that. You want your Star Trek The Next Generation?
That was a KP Toy and Hobby exclusive.
That's right.
An exclusive, very difficult to find. What was not difficult to find, but I think they actually had a problem moving off the shelf, were the Generations toys in the wrong, or the original redone uniforms, which is the only place you could see what they looked like. I went out, I got those just so that I could look at them. I was so excited for Generations. Boy, was I in for a disappointment. And when I say squirrely, I mean, like, look, Rob brought this up, I think, in one of the other shows, the whole the novel series with like Captain Mackenzie Calhoun. Like, these crazy people did a Captain Calhoun action figure, which you can actually buy somewhere. If you can find it, it's like the A-Team. I really dug the Playmates toys. I was very specific with what I got. And like what I could find, because I wasn't like, I wasn't insanely trying to keep up with it all. It was almost too much, but I love the Generation stuff. I loved all the DS9 stuff. There's a great commercial that I think we were playing, right, Mark, before our panels with Armin Shimmerman in work makeup talking about like Major Kira and Lieutenant Dax. It's a little creepy, but at the same time, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about you didn't collect everything. Well, speaking for Rob and myself, and I think, maybe not Darren, but Rob and myself, we spent a lot of time at Toys R Us and KP Toy and Hobby. And
are you kidding, Mark? I still have a case of the Piece of the Action 10-inch figures.
Well, but what I'm saying, like after volleyball, and we would go searching desperately because you had all the TOS stuff. Rob and I were buying TOS, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine.
That's just crazy.
I stopped at the Voyager stuff. But, what was great about the 10-inch line was they went deep. They went really deep with they would have like Garth of Izar, right? I mean, they had really esoteric figures that they did, like from the most obscure episodes of Next Gen and Deep Space Nine.
The great thing about the Garth of Izar was you could make a Commissioner Ferris out of him.
I mean, it was crazy. And they even had, what was it, from Dagger of the Mind? I think they had they just did some crazy stuff. But, they were good. But the real, I think, the thing that stands the test of time are the 10 inches they did, which was a beautiful line with City on the Edge of Forever. There's a Joan Collins, Edith Keeler that's gorgeous. The Piece of the Action figures are great. They did some really, really Amok Time. They did some great figures.
And of course, all the mirror uniforms.
Yeah, they did the 10-inch line of mirror figures. They even made a Marlena Moreau figure. What was amazing about Playmates was their small line was very toyetic. And yet there was something about them that didn't bother me that they were very toyetic and stylized, because the way they had done it was kind of so much fun. And they made a full Next Generation bridge. And then they had the original series. They had made the play set that came with all the principal characters that was in a cardboard bridge display box.
Yeah.
That was really great. But it was those 10-inch figures that they were very, very realistic looking. They were kind of somewhere, but they were halfway between like a Hot Toys figure and Mego. Yeah. They were somewhere in between. And they made all the crews, for Deep Space Nine, for Voyager, for Next Gen, and for the original series. And they were great. Cloth uniforms, great accessories that were painted, unlike their smaller figures. And they made aliens.
And the retailer exclusives were usually the main cast, but in different episodes. Right. So that's how you end up with Piece of the Action or City on the Edge of Forever. The City on the Edge of Forever, Kirk and Spock, are fantastic.
Yeah. They did Amok Time. They did the environmental suits from
Tholian Webb,
Tholian Webb, which was
those
amazing.
Are great.
They were great. And so that line was one of my favorite, because Star Trek figures, a lot of the time when other companies would get them later, Art Asylum and before Mego, they would never you'd get a few figures and then the line would peter out. The Mego aliens they didn't look like, the Gorn was wearing a Klingon uniform, and it was
right.
Whereas Playmates, I don't think a toy company has ever made, other than say Star Wars, has ever made as many figures. They really did a great job.
Well, it came out during the heyday of Star Trek. Right. This was that mid-90s era when Next Generation was doing really well. Deep Space Nine was premiering. The movies were coming out. Voyager. This was the apex, the zenith of Star Trek's popularity. And so as opposed to a lot of these companies that came out with merchandise and then died immediately on the vine, like almost virtually with every Star Trek movie, they, a new licensee would come out, the stuff wouldn't sell, and that would be it. But Playmates did something that was great. They didn't just do the principal crews. They went and did a lot of the guest cast and a lot of other characters. And that was what was so great about it, because a lot of these people just say, oh, we're going to give you 19 versions of Spock. And it's like, rather than saying, okay, we've done Spock, we're going to give you, now we're, give you a whole bunch, not just variations, we're going to give you all these other characters.
They did a Clint Howard Baylock with Baylock's puppet.
Right.
Yes, right.
It's
on
great.
the Fesarius. It was like a little cardboard box. Yeah.
I still have my Next Generation bridge. It's in storage, and I'm going to go back there and get it because I want to give it to Liz Kosklowski because she mentioned online that she wanted one. So I'm going to get that out of mothballs, literally.
They also did, and we're not mentioning it specifically, a bunch of really great ships. I mean, for the price, for whatever it was, $13, $20, $19. I mean, they did the Enterprise, they did the Bird of Prey, they did the Klingon Bird of Prey, they did the Klingon, the Romulan Warbird. They did some really nice ships
they
for
did
the price.
Excelsior.
They did the Vorcha class Klingon battlecruiser.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that.
And the D, and they did the Enterprise 1701 D2, which were all really good at that price point.
It was the golden age of Star Trek toys. They weren't perfect, but they were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of the stuff we talk about, and in this case with merchandise, I will grant you a lot of this is nostalgia. Playmates was genuinely good, as opposed to like a lot of the other stuff we'll talk about where there's a nostalgia element. The Playmates stuff is one of the more impressive lines.
Oh my God.
It was a rare licensee that was successful. Because there are very few in the history of Star Trek, unlike Star Wars, successful licensees. Obviously, for a long time, Simon & Schuster Pocket Books did very well. Bantam in the 70s did very well with the Star Trek license. But a lot of these people come because they can't afford or can't get the Star Wars license. And they say, what else has Star in it? Star Trek. And they think this is going to be a license to print money. And they quickly find out that it is a much smaller fandom.
Well, it's also not only is it a smaller fandom, it's a much different, like, little kids don't want Star Trek figures.
Right.
Little kids, I mean, we were little kids and watched them, but whereas Star Wars appealed much more to younger children, Star Trek did not. And Star Trek always had an older component to it in terms of collectors. And people never really understood that. And there's a lot of people, for whatever reason, Playmates, their figures, especially the smaller ones, appealed to both kids and adults, and that was a really unique.
And adults who were kids.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. A great line from Playmates. Not to be confused with the current line. This was the mid-90s Playmates. Now that brings us to number 6, and we're looking at Darren Doctorman to tell us what's number 6 on our list.
Rob nicely went through the Mego collection, but one thing stands proud of that so much in my mind that I still have mine in working condition. It is the Mego tricorder. You're saying, what? Mego made a tricorder? They sure did for a very short amount of time. When you went to Two Guys, you could see Mego tricorder. And it was a cassette player. On one side, you could record on it and record your own Star Trek adventures, which I did. And on the other side were pre-recorded episode segments from Star Trek, including a badly off-pitch Corbomite maneuver, where everyone was talking just a little bit slow. And it was Christmas morning when I got that thing, it was one of the most magical times ever, because it was big. It was big. It was heavy. It had a sort of a fake leather strap that you could put on, and it was magical. Stop looking like that, Ashley. I know whenever anyone says leather, you go crazy. Calm down. It was so cool, and it had you could open up the top hatch, and there was a lever there that you turn it play, record, stop, rewind. It was so great, and it still is, because it still exists in my memory as one of the coolest things ever. And luckily, soon after that, I got a real tape recorder that worked much better. But it wasn't a Star Trek tape recorder. But that sort of gave me my start. And I think I recorded a little bit of episodes with that tricorder, which is, it's a fantastic convalescence of import there.
My older brother had that tricorder. Pop quiz. How many times was Ashley allowed to play with it?
Allowed?
Allowed.
0 times.
Pop quiz. What would happen to Ashley if his brother caught him playing with it?
You'd be Fight Clubbed.
Yeah, exactly. Phasers on kill.
Did you manage to play with it without him knowing?
I lived in fear of my brother. He's a maniac. But I occasionally gently cupped the tricorder.
And his leather strap.
And his leather strap.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, Mego were the, they were they were there at the beginning.
Yeah.
And
they created the desire.
Mm-hmm. And one of the great mistakes they made the Abrams will say this is not getting the Star Wars license. They had the chance and they passed on it.
Yep.
And they ended up going with the Star Trek the Motion Picture license,
which they cheapened out on, and they shouldn't have. They made the world's worst, cheapest play set for the bridge that was made out of very thin vacuum form plastic. It was terrible.
Terrible.
Mm. Yeah.
But they made good 12-inch figures.
Well, they did.
They did. They're
even though Decker looks exactly like Keir Delay, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Could you imagine having the Star Trek the Motion Picture and Black Hole license the same year?
No.
Oh my God. That's a sign from the universe.
We did get an Ernest Borgnine and Tony Perkins figure out of that line.
That's correct.
2 different scales.
You could redress him as Wild Bunch and Psycho.
I mean, you know what?
I'm sure Jeff Bond has.
What I thought was interesting about toy licenses of that day is like a kid wants to believe that what they're buying toys from, they're like with Star Wars, there's always, you're only seeing the sliver of a universe. There's all this stuff happening that you don't see. But the black hole was over. So you bought black hole
They're
toys.
in hell.
If somehow your parents decided you needed an Ernest Borgnine action figure and you got that line, where do you go with it? Like you see the movie, it's not like, well, we're going to go on another adventure.
No,
and
everyone's dead.
Why would a kid possibly buy black hole figures?
Well, Whitman did come out with Beyond the Black Hole comic, in which Palomino continued on its adventures trying to get back to Earth. And they landed on a dinosaur planet. All kinds of great stuff for all 4 or 6 issues that existed.
Sounds wonderful, Mark.
We're going to do an episode on that one day.
Wow.
I wanted to see the play set where the Palomino goes to hell, right? I mean, now that would have been amazing.
That would have been amazing.
That's a dream sequence, right?
Yeah, no,
it's a dream sequence.
It's a dream sequence? You mean Hans Reinhardt is not in hell?
Yes.
He hasn't melded
trapped
with
in Maximilian?
No.
Maximilian Schell is not in hell? Trapped in Maximilian? I mean, come on, man. It doesn't get more meta than that.
I want to go to hell with Yvette Mimay.
Right?
Mimay?
Mimu.
Mimay.
Oh, good. I'm glad
Pepe
I'm
Le
messing
Pew
up
and
the
Yvette
pronunciations
Mimu.
now.
Yeah.
So I don't have the corner on messing up
beat you to
pronunciations. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well,
Weena.
that brings us
How
now to
about
our top 5.
Our top 5.
And Ashley is back to start us off with the number 5 of the best top 10 Star Trek merchandise.
So I mentioned my brother who had the Mego tricorder, who was a maniac, and I dared not touch his crap. However, he was in my life the original Trekspert. And I've talked about this on the show before. He had his Star Trek club in the neighborhood, and we all had uniforms that he made. And I was a red shirt. I didn't quite get the meaning of that at the time, but I was.
The meaning was that you were Scotty.
I was absolutely Scotty. Yes. Also expendable. And I took an oath to report any Klingon or Romulan clubs that might arise. However, one of the things that my brother did that was super cool was he got the AMT exploration sets with the phaser, the tricorder, the communicator, and he built them all for himself, his friend, my friend, me, for everybody in the club. We had our own full set of gear. So we had our uniforms, we had our gear. Man, we rocked it. It was the best.
Awesome.
Those AMT kits, I just love them. I built several of the ships when I was a kid. I built them up to the point that I went to college, and then I found out chicks don't dig it when you smell like glue. But actually, no, I simply didn't have the time or any place to put them. I tried to do it again when I got out of school, but then I discovered that wives aren't into it either, which is weird. So, but still, look, when I look back at my childhood and my relationship with Star Trek, some of the strongest associations are with those model kits and kind of being in that club and living the Star Trek dream, which to me is goes beyond collecting, and it goes to immersion and kind of being inside that world. And what's better than that?
My uncle was my first Trekspert.
Oh, yeah.
And he not only built the exploration set for me with a little light and thing in the phaser, but he also gave me Mr. Spock's Music from Outer Space album.
Wow, man.
So, he started me on this path, and it's truly a wonderous thing to travel back in time in my mind to that, because it was so spectacular when he brought that box with the exploration set in it and opened it up, and there they were all set, and they were my size. I know everyone's complained about, they're too small.
They were perfect because they were for us.
Yeah,
they were for us.
It was so great, and of course, building version after version of the Enterprise model kit that would break, and then you build the next one that they had re-engineered to work a little better, and even that one broke. But it was so great. My dad and I built the first one, and he spray painted it silver, and I kept saying, "It's not silver. It's not silver. Don't spray paint it silver." But here I am. It's such a wonderful connecting point to our fandom, because it's something that you can do creatively, something you can do with friends, with family.
You know what I love about this show?
What?
It brings back memories.
Yeah.
Things I haven't thought about in 50 years. And I was just thinking, I remember building the Enterprise fairly capably, thinking, I'm good at this model building thing. I built the Klingon ship. Said, I'm pretty good at this model building thing. The Galileo 7, I'm getting really good at this. Then I got the bridge.
Yep.
And I was like, maybe I'm not as good at this model building thing as I thought.
They call it the Widowmaker.
Ass. And as hard as that was, I remember, by the time 79 comes around, that fucking Enterprise model kit of the refit with the lights.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I was meant to make model kits.
It was great.
Man, that was so much fun making all those models.
I have to say that one of my favorite things, so however many Enterprises, in the wake of the Franz Josef technical manual, they re-released the Enterprise model with all the names of the 12 Constitution class ships, which I had to build all 12 of them.
Of course you did.
And my mother was...
Well, there are 13.
Well, yes, there are 13.
And actually, we're all one big happy fleet.
At one point, I had 14 Enterprise models in my bedroom, and the 14th was my destroyed Constellation.
Nice.
That I was using Ohio blue tip matches in my fireplace to burn. And what I did was, Then I had flat styrene. I went out and got styrene, like flat styrene at the model kit store
for the decks.
So I made the
Come
decks,
on, styrene.
and smashed them in the. And it was so. And my mom, she was like, I'll never forget because she was smelling the burning plastic, and she came downstairs screaming at me. And she's like, "Why are you burning your Enterprise model?" I go, "No, Mom, it's
not the Enterprise.
The phasers.
Yeah, because
you're playing with matches."
Now, did you ever take the saucer section with the dorsal thing and like stick it onto just a warp nacelle?
Yes,
and call that a scout?
Wow!
I can't tell you. We made scouts and destroyers. I made a transport tug.
Did you try to make a dreadnought?
I did. And I could never, I tried.
The secondary hull was never right.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I often wondered why they didn't make those ships, the Franz Josef ships, but
because they weren't licensable.
I know, I know. But the Galileo, the Romulan ship, and then they made the adversary set where they had the 3 smaller versions of the Enterprise on that triangular base. And then they made K7 Space Station.
Oh, that was a good one.
With a tiny Enterprise.
Yeah, with the tiny Enterprise.
With the tiny Enterprise.
And all of these kits have been repopped, so you can go get them now.
Yes.
But they were the closest. The thing is, what's interesting is that was when it was AMT, the model company, that actually helped the Klingon battlecruiser and the Galileo were manufactured for the show because of the model company.
Yeah, by them.
Yeah, so it was
they in exchange for the free license for the shuttlecraft. They built the actual miniature, and then they built the live action shuttlecraft.
Yeah. Which is amazing.
It's amazing.
Those were. I didn't understand how inaccurate the Enterprise model was at the time, but I knew the deck lines were weird. But it was the closest thing you could get to accurate representations of what was on screen, because the toys, you had a dinky Enterprise. It was nothing like. It was so weird, and
it was dinky.
And those model kits were they were the closest thing you could get to touching real Star Trek.
Yeah.
And when I turned the lights off at night, what was the only thing I would see? UFO, the UFO model. That was their generic
repackaged from the Leif Erikson.
Didn't they make that for? They were going to pitch that to Star Trek, but they weren't interested. What was the story?
No, it was
with
from
that?
a show that was never produced. I think it was from another show that Matt Jeffries worked on. But he gave it to AMT to produce. It's called the Leif Erikson, and then it was later repackaged as UFO.
UFO, yeah. But it glowed in the dark. That one.
That's actually a very cool spaceship. That was repopped as well.
Amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And it has a little scout ship. Has a little scout ship inside it that is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I love that one.
And we should mention now that, of course, the company Round 2 has gone on and resuscitated the AMT kits, and basically using the same tooling to create modern versions of them. They've updated them a little bit, but some amazing work and some amazing release.
That makes
Darren,
me
what does
go and get
AMT
them and
stand
build them.
for?
Aluminum Model Technology, something like that. Aluminum Model something. I don't remember.
Awesome models.
Awesome models.
Yeah. And Rob, you've been building the round 2.
The Round 2 models are just spectacular. I mean, they 1/350th scale versions of the original Enterprise. You can either build it as the first pilot, the second pilot, and then the production version, or if you want, you can get decals and make it the ISS Enterprise. They did it,
but then you have to fly it this way instead of the other way.
And then, of course, they've done the refit. The refit kit's great. I mean, there's a little inaccuracy in it, but it's a spectacular kit when you finish it. But then they've done things like they recently put out in the last couple of years the Grissom from Star Trek 3, which is a great kit. They've done battle cruisers. They've done the Romulan.
Did they ever figure out how to get to the bridge on the Grissom?
Well, I don't know.
But what the hell?
It's
got the Cerritos problem.
I know the Cerritos problem. They're making a Cerritos, by the way.
Are they? I would totally get that.
And so they've just done in terms of handling the license, they've done a spectacular. They just came out with a 1/350th scale Kronos 1 from Star Trek 6.
Oh, wow.
Which is it's the updating of their Katinga from the
D7,
motion picture, which is an amazing, the D7, but it comes with the brass, the
etched brass pieces.
Brass that they added, and it looks painted up. It looks absolutely incredible.
That's and Darren's going to stand in for praxis. They're going to use for target practice.
And they've done
not.
They've done a terrific job. They made a great shuttlecraft kit. They upgraded it later with an interior. And it is they've done a fantastic job.
Did they ever do a version of Spock shooting the 3-headed snake?
I think I do think they repopped that something, but I don't remember.
Gene didn't approve of that one.
We know it.
No.
Right, Darren?
I don't think that Spock would be killing a life form the moment he beams down. I think that's against our policy and certainly against the character of Mr. Spock.
I love that he used to call that out. He hated that model kit.
Yeah.
He just was so focused. And then when he started, but I didn't like in Star Trek 2, they killed the SETI eel. It was like that model kit where Spock's killing the Hydra. It's like, come on.
They did put it out in like a tin box.
Right.
So but they gave it a backstory, so there was a reason Spock was killing it.
Spock didn't actually pull the trigger on
killing
them. He was threatening them. That's all.
It was stun. He had it on the stun setting.
It was all on stun.
Yeah, there was no kill eye.
He had it on tickle.
And here's something that's rather interesting. The J.J. Abrams Enterprise model was never licensed for release in the United States. It was only ever released overseas by Revell.
Why is that, Rob?
I don't know.
Probably because the licensing fee was too expensive for the United States, and they realized that not enough people would buy it.
Probably.
Maybe it was too expensive to create those giant nacelles.
And by the way, I mean, I can't stand that design of the Enterprise, but I'm not going to say whether I did or not. I may have that kit with lights and stuff.
Shame on you. Shame.
I've never,
okay.
that design I will never understand the design of the Kelvinverse Enterprise. All the iterations.
I don't know why they just didn't use the Enterprise for the motion picture.
I mean, they completely changed the size. The size of the Enterprise in the J.J. Abrams Kelvinverse is like 4 times the size of the Enterprise.
But the windows are the same.
Yeah.
The windows are relatively the same. It's ludicrous.
Well, why does it have windows at all? On the bridge.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Let's not go there. Because this is about celebrating the love. And speaking of love, I want to go back to Darren.
Yes.
For number 4 on our list of the top 10 Star Trek merchandise.
In the 1800s, if you were to go into a sitting room at a fancy house, there would often be a little device on the divan that you could pick up and look at these amazing 3-dimensional photographs that you would hold up to your face and look through this viewer and see wonderful worlds in 3D. And you would change the cards out, and it was very entertaining for people in your sitting room. Now, flash forward 80 years, and we had something that was called, get ready, the Viewmaster.
This GAF Viewmaster is a lot of fun. What do you think?
It's really interesting. The 3-dimensional color pictures are extraordinary. I find these how to play football reels very instructional. I always considered the GAF Viewmaster an ingenious invention of great educational value.
Gee, I always thought it was just a lot of fun.
In, I believe, the 50s, they first came out with Viewmasters, and it was these were the black bakelite viewers. They were very solid. They were metal. They were bakelite. They were glass, and they were very fancy. And you would put in these discs with pairs of photographs that you could look at, and they were in 3D. Now, 2 of the greatest offerings that Viewmaster did were both Star Trek related. One was a set that was shot on the episode of the Omega Glory. And they shot these real 3D photos in the same placement as the camera on the show. And they took 3D pictures of everyone. They are beautiful. They are amazing. You look at them, you are there on set, and it is truly a wonderful thing. And the abridged story of the episode is in the little booklet and is really quite ludicrous, but you can read it and see
even the unabridged version is quite ludicrous. I mean, the Omega Glory.
Darren's right. You know, they also use in that episode, there's 2 Constitution class ships.
Right.
And they use the AMT models.
Yeah.
They use the AMT model and the 3-foot model from the show.
Yes.
Right. To film
that was
the
recently
3D,
discovered.
That's
the
correct.
3D image for the Viewmaster.
It's truly wonderful. The other offering was a set from the animated show, which was the adaptation of Yesteryear. They called it Mr. Spock's Time Trek on the Viewmaster set. But these, of course, were created by tracing the cells and moving them a little bit to create the 3D version, because you couldn't shoot it directly from the animation because the animation wasn't in 3D.
Right.
But it's truly glorious. And these 2 representations of Star Trek in the 3D world were wonderful. And our friend Mojo enjoyed these so much that he was planning on doing 3D versions of modern Trek back in the late 90s and making Viewmaster sets for friends and family. That never went through, but it was a great idea, and we're still a fan of 3D even now.
It brings a smile to my face just thinking about it, and boy, to me, it's just hysterical that they could have picked any episode, and when they asked Gene Roddenberry, he picks the one that he wrote. The Omega Glory.
Yeah, so he could get
it could be
residuals.
like the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah, right. It could have been so many great episodes second season, and it's the Omega Glory.
I love the Omega Glory.
We know you do. And, it's hard because you got Morgan Woodward without that distinctive voice because it's silent, of course, but you can hear it.
But you have the iconic sound of the lever on the side of the Viewmaster going.
Yes.
It's so embedded in my brain that it's such wonderful memories looking at Viewmasters.
How many times do you think you watched that?
The Viewmaster?
Sure.
Thousands.
Yeah, me too.
Thousands.
I used to keep it on my nightstand.
Yeah.
On my next to my bed. I just because it was the Viewmaster with something in it looked really cool because it was the white circular
white disc,
and because it was literally film, it looked Hollywood-esque anyway.
Yes.
It just looked super cool when I loved everything. I loved sliding it into the Viewmaster.
Yeah, feel it catch.
You sort of knew that you had it seated right.
Yeah, because there was a UFO Viewmaster.
Yep.
They were the greatest things ever.
And the thing that was most appealing, and it's difficult to explain this, I think, A, to somebody who did not have the toy when they were our age then, and then B, kind of kids, my kids' age, who have this completely different experience with interactivity.
Right.
That there was something about the Viewmaster experience that was immersive. It was what I was talking about with having the model kits built that you could hold, right? It kind of felt like because you could just block everything else out and you're just looking at that Viewmaster and you have full control over it. There is something about being inside the episode and not just watching it. And so even though it was all presented to you, it kind of activates your imagination in a completely different way. That was always awesome. And look, for those of you playing at home who are not of a certain age, again, understand that sometimes this was all we had. And so, and it's not like making an excuse for it at all. It's like what I'm saying is that it gave us an appreciation for the experience, right? It kind of built a need to just live inside of it. And I think it probably explains why the hell, 50 years later, here we sit.
And why we're talking about it, because like when you're a kid, you're looking at the visual effects and saying, why does everything look like it does on TV except for these special effects, right? But then years later, as we do our Trekication, our Trek archaeology, we learn more and we find out, because they couldn't shoot the 3D of the actual optical effects. They had to recreate the effects for 3D in camera, and they used the model kit and the 3-foot Enterprise. I mean, like, that's interesting.
Well, and also, unlike now, the only time you could watch Star Trek was when it aired.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you had a Viewmaster, you could pick it up whenever you wanted to. And
you could relive the Omega glory over and over again.
And Star Trek never looked better than in the Viewmaster.
Yeah, and the same was true of like the photo novels. I mean, it seems so strange.
It wasn't NTSC video.
Yeah.
No. And you couldn't. There was a world that we will always remember where you just couldn't watch what you wanted when you wanted to watch it.
Yep.
And that was...
we're kind of the last generation of that.
Yeah. And I started working in this, what was at the time the second video store in the United States in 1980. And it was a wondrous time when you'd get like, oh my God, Smokey and the Bandit on tape. And that you could take. It was so revolutionary to live through a time when you could take a movie or when you could get Star Trek and tape it off the air. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was the Viewmaster, the Omega Glory, and Mr. Spock's Time Trek, which was the original title of yesteryear. What's not? And we're getting down to it. We're getting to number 3. And here's the thing. I think that a lot of people, the holy grail of their Star Trek collecting is a replica of the Enterprise. And much to a lot of people's dismay, the recent Tomy release didn't live up to a lot of people's expectations. But that hasn't always been the case, Rob, has it?
You know what? If I made this list and it was just my own personal list, this would be the number 1 spot.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, because first of all, for me, the Enterprise, the 1701 Enterprise is totemic. It's the thing that I most associate with Star Trek in terms of something to have.
You could even say it's iconic.
Right.
It is.
I love that he said totemic. I want to adopt that now.
It's totemic. And I mean, it is. So here's the thing. There was never a perfect Enterprise. You could build a model of it, but there was always an imperfection. You could put lights in it. You could make it, but it was not perfect. And it certainly was never the perfect size.
Right.
Well, so Master Replicas, this great company that existed, they had both the Star Wars and Star Trek license. They made a lot of lightsaber hilts. They made the beautiful versions of the tricorder, the communicator, and the Type 2 phaser, the Klingon disruptor. They also made a beautiful Millennium Falcon.
Yes.
But they came out with a 3-foot, basically 350th scale Enterprise. That's perfect. I mean, it is I remember, or it was like $1,200. I was like, take my money. I remember getting this thing. And you have to understand that when this thing came out and I'd built how many models of the Enterprise and Round 2 hadn't put out their 1/350th scale of the Enterprise yet. The dinky, there was never an Enterprise that was perfect. There was always something wrong with it. Until this. And everything about this thing was like I didn't understand that you could have a perfect Enterprise, that you could have something, and it came on like an old style headphone jack plug that it would slide onto which was an elegant way to get it powered up because it lit up. It does light up. I have one. I have this right over there. It lights up. The engines, the nacelles have the effect pretty much duplicated as best as they could be in that scale. I mean, there is a whirring of the engines that I even find soothing, But even the beautiful, elegant stand, which is a Delta, but it's heavy duty. It's not going to bend. The warp nacelles are not going to sag. This is, in my mind, perfection. It is the single greatest Star Trek collectible ever made, probably that ever will be made. Now, there has been stuff that's come out, the model. You can make the model kits if you want to take the time,
right?
Even more accurate. You can build them with an open hangar deck. You can do whatever you want, but that requires a lot of work. But as far as an out-of-the-box collectible goes, it is, in my mind, the single greatest Star Trek collectible ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
And I think 2 of the 4 people on this podcast own this, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and what's crazy is not only do I own one, I also have the Playmobil Enterprise, which is actually bigger, and I have the Tomy Enterprise too.
I do have the Playmobil Enterprise.
It's great. The Playmobil Enterprise is great.
Yep.
It's great.
Is it? I heard it's very hard to build. And a lot of
very hard to build.
No, it's not hard to. It just, you have to put the stickers on.
You're not trying to build it with a 7-year-old, my man.
Oh, it takes it. Yeah, you have to stick a dilithium.
Once again, Star Trek isn't Lego. It's Playmobil.
You have to stick a dilithium crystal in the engineering section for the electronics to work.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you know the first thing that I did when I got my Master Replicas Enterprise?
You got drunk.
How can I say what I think you did? Even though no,
I hope
shouldn't
not.
say it.
It was nothing lewd.
Okay. Because for me it was.
Treat her like a lady. She'll always bring you home, Rob.
Oh, I did. I brought Kleenex with me, though.
I put on my Captain Kirk tunic and I staged the shot where Shatner is sitting with the 3-foot Enterprise. And I took that photo.
When he's looking into it and Requiem for Methuselah?
No. But there was those series of photos with the 3-foot that Shatner and Nimoy took. It's on the cover of Nimoy's album. He's holding it like that. I took one of those too. It's the perfect size. It's the size that we always knew it was at some point. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
I wish I had bought it when I had the chance.
I wish I had bought 6 of them. Or 12, because I would have, or 13, I would have,
you'd have the whole fleet.
Because now with the decal sets, you can change them. Although even the way they printed the pennants and everything on that model, it's so beautifully done.
Our friend Bill George built a freighter from TOS that is in the same scale, 1/350th. Of the Enterprise, and he wonderfully gifted it to me at one Wonderfest one year, and it is now sitting next to my Master Replicas Enterprise.
That's a special guy, that Bill George.
Nice. He's awesome.
He is just a really great guy. Big fan of his, personally and professionally.
Yes.
Do you think he likes Star Trek or Space 1999 better?
You know what? He likes everything better.
He likes everything. He likes it all.
Well, but
it's like Queen. I want it all.
Ships, Space 1999.
He wants it now.
Pretty.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is a gorgeous Enterprise replica. Sensational. Not available for purchase anymore, but something worth.
Well, I mean, round 2 did fill that void. I have to give him a shout out if you want to build that.
Well, that's a big difference between owning a completed Enterprise and having to build one.
It is a big difference.
I know.
It's a really big difference.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what to say.
Someday, Mark. Someday.
Well, if you guys die first, can you leave me your Master Replicas Enterprise?
Sure.
Just asking.
Let's table that for a future discussion.
The fucking estate tax is going to kill me on that one.
That's right.
Okay. Anyway, okay. We're getting down to it. Number 2, Rob Burnett. What's number 2 on our list of top 10 best Star Trek merchandise.
Well, this is not the time for nostalgia for this one. This is a fairly, actually, just a couple of years old. It's a new company called Exo-6 that was born out of the ashes of QMX. Najin Tam is the crazy, mad impresario behind this. And he is making what he calls museum-grade 6-scale figures. Obviously, over the last 15, 20 years, the super detailed, perfect 6-scale replica figure realm has grown exponentially larger with companies like Hot Toys, now InArt, and so many others, So Toys, all these unlicensed figures. Perfectly accurate 6-scale figures are a big deal.
Yeah.
And I was always hoping that somebody would jump in and make 6-scale Star Trek figures. Well, they have, and they've been very aggressive doing so. And they've been making some really great 6-scale figures. They're kind of all over the place. It's weird that the first crew they're going to finish is Voyager.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because Voyager was one of the most streamed of the Star Trek shows. But they're doing, for the most part, their figures are terrific. And the tailoring on the uniforms is spectacular. And their Enterprise figures, Shran and Captain Archer, fantastic figures. They look absolutely incredible. They did Star Trek the Motion Picture figures. They did Admiral Kirk, which Mego did in a large scale, but they did Admiral Kirk and Spock when he shows up on the Enterprise in his black Vulcan robes. And they're going to do what people refer as Disco McCoy when McCoy first shows back up on the Enterprise.
Right.
But that hasn't come out yet.
The Spock figure is mistakenly named Kolinar Spock. It's not Kolinar Spock.
No, it's not Kolinar Spock. That's
Kolinar Spock is a different costume altogether.
Different outfit. They just put up for pre-order today, as a matter of fact, Ethan Peck's Spock from Strange New Worlds and Discovery,
right?
Which I will not be buying.
Yeah,
But the classic figure line they did a beautiful Q.
Yeah.
They did Picard as Locutus. That's amazing. Right. They did First Contact Picard and First Contact Data. And they've got 3 figures they're doing, or 4 figures they're doing from Picard season 3.
They do Shaw. I'm in.
They are doing Shaw.
They're doing Shaw.
The Shaw figure is amazing.
Picard.
It's amazing. Yeah,
they're doing Vadic.
Vadic, and
I want to ask Stashwick to sign it just because I want him to say no.
Oh, he'll sign. No one is more overjoyed that they're making a Shaw figure than him.
Yeah,
they're making me 12 inches.
The head sculpt is phenomenal on Shaw.
One thing that was put up for pre-order a couple months ago that I'm waiting for it to drop is Kirstie Alley as Saavik.
Oh,
which is gorgeous.
Amazing.
And the only time that she's been done was in the 6-inch Playmates, which was nice for a 6-inch figure. But this is just a whole nother level. And it's a great tribute to her Saavik. I mean, it's spot on. It's gorgeous. Obviously I pre-ordered it as well.
And they're doing the environmental jackets, which are just really incredible. And Najin's family comes from their clothing makers.
Right.
So he brings a real expertise to the
tailoring.
Yeah. And
he's a simple tailor.
Yes, yeah.
He's Garrick.
I would say this, though. Sometimes their face sculpts are a little hit and miss.
Yeah,
but
very rarely, though. They're usually pretty good.
They're pretty good. Pretty good.
The motion
really
picture
great.
Kirk was slightly off, but nothing that you would. I mean, it's so amazing. People are so anal. Like, I mean, what he's doing is so spectacular that it really is, people just need stuff to complain about, apparently.
Well, I think what's really what they do, what I don't think he's received enough appreciation for is most action figures have neutral expressions.
Right.
But if Najin can find an iconic expression for his figure, like the Mirror Universe Sulu.
Right.
That is perfection. I didn't really need it, but I bought it anyway, and it's perfection.
That because he's got that smile on his face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When the cat's away, and it's and it's really
it's Sunday with wrestling.
And same with the motion picture Kirk. There's a bit of an expression on his face. So they did the same thing with Anson Mount's Pike. But I really love this line. And they've done a lot of really cool things. Like they come with this little ID card that's in with each figure, and then the transporter-esque bases linked together.
Well, the packaging is a work of art. These sturdy boxes that are extremely well designed and very sturdy. Really, really, really beautifully done, because these are expensive figures. So the fact that they're not just in these cheap packaging, that's part of it's, something that I think Apple learned very early or changed the marketing. It used to be nobody thought about packaging, and then
the
Johnny Ives
experience
changed the whole experience of opening a box and finding something very special in the box was, work of art. I kind of feel like with the X06, the box is also part of the experience. I mean, the boxes are really gorgeous.
They went heavy duty with their motion picture boxes, and then the Locutus box. Yeah. And really outstanding. And there's a lot of you open up the box for Admiral Kirk, and it comes with there's a cardboard insert that's the side of the Enterprise where the airlock is when they first.
Yes.
And the fact that they did that requires, there's a lot of thought put into these.
Yep.
Yeah, you wouldn't normally see that with any other actor.
Well, and I thought Quark was very well done. One of the first of their aliens, and probably the figure people who listen to this podcast are going to laugh, but the figure I'm most looking forward to is Kruge from Star Trek 3, which is, from all accounts, from the photos and the pre-order, and we saw it in Vegas, stunning, just spectacular. Spectacular. And, as much as we joke about Star Trek 3 not being a good movie, which it's not,
it doesn't mean it's not enjoyable.
It doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. And obviously that kitschy, over the top, goofy performance, is just iconic. A classic performance.
But as a
classic performance and an amazing figure.
To have that figure on your shelf, and he comes in with all of his regalia, and they do some really interesting things where all the accessories have magnets in them.
Yeah.
So they're magnetized to the outfits.
Super smart.
And it really was well done. And even the next generation tricorders have magnets, so when you flip them open, they're in two pieces, so there's not a hinge that'll break.
Right.
And you just put them together and close them, and the magnets hold them. Really, 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 there's a lot of thought that was put into these figures.
What I love is doing the figures we haven't seen. And, the thing that worries me is that we'll see too many, because it's easier, of the same characters in different outfits. Whereas I really want to see Ruck, and I want to see Jeffrey Hunter as Pike. And I want to, especially the aliens, which I know is much more expensive. I'm hoping we'll see a Garrick, and a Gul Dukat. And a because, unfortunately, he's spending a bunch of time doing a bunch of crap that nobody wants. And I'd really like to see that vintage era, that the classic era of Star Trek. I don't mean TOS, but the original series, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine. I'm excited about the Picard season 3 figures. I didn't buy any of the Voyager figures. I mean, they're very well done, but didn't need them. But he's doing really incredible work. And now he just announced he's doing the Kelvin universe, which again, I wish those resources were going into, a deeper dive into the Legendary series as opposed to, the Kelvin universe, which I just can't imagine. It's brought down so many licensees. I just hate to see him.
Yeah, I know.
I make the same mistake.
I want to see him make money.
I want to see him successful because I want him to keep doing this. Because
me too.
He's just doing an amazing job, and these figures are just gorgeous. And he's keeping the price right, and Rob, more than anybody with these hot toys and a lot of these things, you put down the deposit, and then you're lucky if you see it 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah,
he's turning these things around in record time.
Sometimes less than 6 months.
Well, sometimes he's doing for immediate purchase, like he did with the motion picture.
Yeah,
which is he guessed how many he could sell, and he just made it available rather than pre-order to figure out what his numbers were.
No, it's amazing, and you don't get a lot of, because Star Trek as a license is risky,
right? Yeah,
unless you know who your customers are.
And to be honest, they do dovetail well with the X06 figures. I mean, with the QMX figures.
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, having that Khan Noonien Singh from Space Seed.
It's
I'm so glad
amazing.
I have that figure.
It's amazing.
Oh, that's such a great figure. The Khan from Space Seed.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, and I suspect, that we'll
have
see
a Khan
X06 do a Khan from Star Trek 2.
Oh, yeah, no, they are. They are.
And that will be great.
When? After Voyager.
Yeah, it's like, but first we have to finish Voyager because I really need that Neelix figure.
Damn right you do. Wait, what?
And now he's getting, doing the whole Strange New Worlds thing, which again, whether we are fans or not, is irrelevant. The new stuff just doesn't sell the way the classic stuff sells. So it's like,
it doesn't matter if we like it. It matters what the market likes.
Well, what the market will bear. Exactly.
And the audience for these shows is not the audience that buys action figures.
Yeah.
Not $200 action figures, that's for sure.
They don't, and they prove that with Michael Burnham and Saru.
Yeah,
You
which
can
didn't
still
sell.
get those, very available, But in the case, I'm sure they have to make them. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's part of the license.
Yeah.
Which
is, again, cutting their own throats. With
A running man can cut his own throat 1,000 times in one night.
Yeah.
He went wild. He slit their throats. He
did things to their bodies. Wait, what? Now I'm conflating all the lines.
Okay, that brings us, before we reveal our number one piece of Star Trek merchandise, we've got a few honorary mentions we want to highlight, starting with Rob Burnett.
Well, okay, I have to say that my honorary mention is the Hallmark Star Trek Christmas ornament.
Good choice.
Damn it.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I would have
okay.
I mean, I have to say, obviously, we go all the way back 25 years with a Hallmark Christmas ornament, which was pivotal for us, or me specifically. But I think that Hallmark has done a fantastic job. I mean, I don't know why they'd make a Christmas ornament of Spock dying in the engineering section.
Because he has risen.
He is risen indeed.
Yeah, he is risen.
That's an Easter ornament.
But they're tree capper of the big Enterprise. Yeah. They've made all the ships. I love getting the Galileo shuttlecraft with Leonard Nimoy's voice.
Oh my God. It's shuttlecraft to Enterprise. Shuttlecraft to Enterprise. Happy holidays. Live long and prosper.
It's so great. And by the way, that miniature is awesome. Like
it's great.
It's great. And the Hallmark Christmas ornaments, and they're still making them.
Yeah,
totally.
25 years later.
Well, you know what my favorite was? Mr. Arix, which I got to say, I hope X06 does as well. But I was so excited to get Mr. Arix and MRS as a Hallmark Christmas ornament because nobody does Arix and MRS. So that was really awesome. And I know this is a Star Trek show, but I got this year's ornament
already.
I could not believe the 78 Galactica is this year's Hallmark Christmas ornament. And it lights up and it looks for Earth. It's awesome.
I didn't even know they did that.
How does it look for Earth?
I don't know. You hang it on your tree, your menorah, whatever, and
the people at Hallmark
searches
knows
for
what's
Earth.
up. They know if they make that from a 1978 TV show, we'll buy it.
Yeah, there's at least one guy out there who's going to do it.
Yeah,
I personally love to take my the centerpiece of my Christmas ornament collection is Deep Space Nine, and then I array the other ships around it.
Yeah,
and someday my dream is to recreate the Dominion War around my Christmas tree.
You know what you should get
the baby
Playmates
in the
Deep
middle.
Space Nine.
Yeah.
The Playmates Deep Space Nine was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Really. And it lit up. That was a great. That's not on our list, but man, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could dock yourself to it.
Okay. Well, that was a great pick, Rob. The Hallmark ornaments. It's a deep bench.
I feel
of
bad though that we haven't mentioned something yet. I don't know.
What?
We haven't mentioned something yet. Mention it.
Well, what's your honorary mention?
That was his honorary mention.
The Hallmark Christmas ornaments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My honorary mention. I didn't.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, there you go. That brings us to Ashley Edward Miller and his pick for honorary mention. That isn't the Hallmark Christmas ornaments, but it could have been.
It totally could have been. It absolutely could have been. So you know what? Here's what I'm going to go with. Because by God, look, we've spent this entire show talking about things that really appealed to us when we were children, right. and things that really activated our nostalgia for things that we enjoyed when we were children. So for my honorable mention, I'm gonna suggest something that I appreciate as a grown-ass man. The Star Trek Spirits collection, featuring various and sundry boozes, whiskeys, wines, liqueurs. If you want your Romulan ale, you can get it. I mean, come on. It's like you don't even have to take it across the neutral zone.
Why, Ashley, that's illegal.
All right, well, shh. So there you go, kids. Nothing better than it's Christmas Eve, sitting around looking at your Hallmark ornaments, laying with like your Migo tricorder, getting whacked out on Romulan ale. I mean, you can do it. You can live the dream.
Holding your AMT model kit over a candle and pretending you're Sylvia and Korab.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The crew's going, that's getting hot in here, and or you can just be like, you can hold the front of your Enterprise, like and you can wonder like how you even spell Adonis. You know what I mean? It can be crazy. See, exactly, Adonias,
Jessica,
and how you say it?
Buttermaker.
Say it 3 times fast.
Yeah.
Mamay.
The bottles are wonderful. I love the bottles.
The booze is not great, but the bottles are terrific.
Yeah, the bottles are absolutely worth it. The James T. Kirk bourbon was pretty much the worst bourbon I've ever tasted.
Right, but then you just pour it out and you put something real inside of it.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Exactly. You did the same. It's like you take the.
And this is while Shatner was pouring it. So.
And even then, it wasn't that good. Then. Okay, well, that's a great pick. The Star Trek Spirits.
Yes.
Which is a recent introduction to the licensed. And it was so funny because I remember Darren, because Darren has no censor. He went up to them at the convention, and you're like, "Oh, this is really cool." But why wouldn't you make? What did you say? You went up to the Star Trek wine people and said, "Remember? What did you say
Something
at the convention?"
Deeply rude.
You remember you made some rude comment, not rude, but just like
it wasn't rude. It was
honest.
Are you making Sorry and Brandy?
Right, Sorry and Brandy, right? And they didn't know what you were talking about.
Yeah, no idea.
Why wouldn't you make Sorry and Brandy?
Yeah,
it's so obvious.
It's only the most mentioned liquor in any Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well,
it just shows you who is doing this stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem when you have a licensor or licensee that doesn't know the property.
If they were thinking, they would do like what there are whiskey makers. Like there was I think it was Glenfiddich who had a Game of Thrones license. Mm-hmm. And so they would issue special bottles of different single malts that were like House Targaryen and House Stark and all of this other shit, right? And so you would think that the guys who've put all of their energy and time into making these beautiful bottles would do some kind of a deal with like, hey, Macallan, even though you're the missionary position of whiskeys, like maybe we should do something cool, right? It's like, you'd think he would do something like that rather than try to master the alcohol of it as well. But, oh well.
It's, like most licensing things, it leaves much to be desired.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that was the Star Trek Spirits. And that brings us to Darren and his pick for honorary mention.
My pick is something really stupid, but it's also kind of cool. Back in the time of Star Trek V, the Kraft Marshmallow Company made a send-in. I think you had to put box tops or something, and you would get an official Mr. Spock marshmallow dispenser, even though it should be a marshmallow dispenser because of that scene in the movie. It was a plastic thing that you would fold together and create this little plastic tube that you could stuff marshmallows in and then press a lever and one marshmallow would come out at a time. It was really silly, but it's kind of cool because who would have thought that Star Trek would give you a marshmallow dispenser? It's magical, and from the mind of Mr. Spock, it's just wonderful. Try it.
Yeah.
Won't you?
What that's right up there with the Spock helmet, the old 60s Spock helmet. With the siren on top of it. The marshmallow dispenser. I mean, that is one of the kitschiest. Although it actually is something that was used in the show, which gives it an advantage over the Spock helmet. But it's pretty wild that they made that, and that you can dispense marshmallows through this marshmallow dispenser.
Right, because everyone needs a marshmallow dispenser.
Wanted one and never got one.
Yeah. Well, Rob, it's not too late.
A marshmallow or a dispenser?
It's still possible.
The dispenser.
How much is it on eBay?
Haven't looked.
I haven't looked.
Here's the thing. The Greg Jean auction was admittedly pretty awesome, but it was lacking in marshmallow dispensers. There was no marshmallow dispensers. So it was not exhaustive and complete.
Even though he probably made the marshmallow dispenser.
Yeah,
he probably did, right? That's a good point. But he probably gave it to somebody.
No doubt.
Just think, could have gone for another $100,000.
Indeed.
Anyway, amazing. Okay, that brings us to my honorary mention.
Yes.
And, I want to point out, because people are probably thinking, why is that beautiful Star Trek The Motion Picture Director's Edition box set not here? We're not considering Blu-rays merchandise.
It's not. No.
They're Blu-rays. They're home video entertainment. So there's certain things where you may say, "Oh, okay, how come we're not going with that?" But because we don't consider that merchandise, right? It's the same thing with the books. I love those gorgeous IDW hardcover collections of the UK comic book strips, Star Trek comic book strips, and the Star Trek The Motion Picture newspaper strips. Those are beautifully done. But again, those are books. That's not merchandise. We've done books.
Yeah.
Right. So my pick, and we'll see if you guys allow it. You might not, in which case I will have to go with my other choice. My pick for the honorary mention for Star Trek merchandise, it's not a piece of merchandise. It's a place. It's the Federation Trading Post in New York City, where fans from all over the world came to buy a combination of licensed and homemade Star Trek merchandise, whether it was the giant 6-foot posters of Kirk and Spock, they wanted to own a Tribble, they wanted to get the newest issue of the Star Trek poster book. It could all be found at the Federation Trading Post in Midtown Manhattan.
Was it 110 East 53rd Street?
110 East 53rd Street. I believe you're correct, sir. And it was a pretty awesome, magical place. They had recreations of the Baylock puppet. They had recreations of the ships. Doug Drexler worked there. And on one stormy, rainy night, even Gene Roddenberry paid a visit to the Federation Trading Post. Places like that don't exist anymore. Even the Great Forbidden Planet, which was another staple of, certainly it started in London, but the New York store was extraordinary. And then the two-story it became a much smaller comic book store down the block. It's not nearly as amazing as it once was. And we love Forbidden Planet, but the Federation Trading Post for a bright, shining moment burned ever so brightly and was the mecca for all things Trek. And I love when Doug Drexler tells the story of how when they opened it, everyone around, the other store owners would laugh and mock them, like, who's going to go to the store? And within weeks, once the advertising began on WPIX, they had lines around the block.
Yeah.
I was one of them.
Truly amazing. It was down the street from where my dad worked at a ad agency. And one day he came home with a rolled up poster of the crew on the transporter.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was the most fantastic thing I'd ever seen. And he said, "There's a store that I found that I think you would like." And he took me to the Federation Trading Post. He took me into town. And oh my God, it was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
This was a mecca of things that I'd never seen before and would never see again. this was a place where people would gather who were fans of this thing that I thought only I liked. And it was, you look everywhere on the shelves, there was everything you could possibly imagine that was related to Star Trek. And more. They had communicators on the front counter. They had a little model of the Doomsday Machine that someone had made out of an ice cream cone, I believe. It was so great. And I actually didn't get to see the museum. I was there before they had opened the museum and back. So I didn't get to see it. But man, I got books there. I got posters there. It was so great. And I missed that time so much. I missed that magical moment when I saw this thing.
By the way, my backup. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was just going to say that these are things that will never come again.
Yeah.
Just because the world and the way pop culture works and the way our culture works, with the internet, you can at the keystroke you can get whatever you want.
There are no hidden secrets anymore.
No, you could see it. And the idea that we had to go find things and and there was no way to know, you could still stumble on things you didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Those days are over. And I don't think that there's ever going to be, and I don't want to be one of those, the olden days was so much better. But
truth is truth.
But
because let's point out, there is something great about all these movies, all these TV shows being available at the click of a button now.
Of course, it's magical.
There's so much that's great about the world, and the way that in some ways social media has brought very disparate people who live across the world together to celebrate what they love. In this case, Star Trek. It's not, you're not sharing letters, or you can't make expensive phone calls. You can, just text back and forth or Instagram, and it's bringing all kinds of fans together. I mean, again, we all came together in a very unique way because of our interest in pursuing a career in the business. But, people are just Star Trek fans. It used to be you'd meet at conventions, but now people meet through these groups on Facebook or, Patreon or whatever, and these communities come. So it's not to say that we had it better. It was different. And there's things about the past that we missed.
I think there's something that's very, and it's, again, interesting kind of watching Caden in this context. I don't think you can love something truly if loving it is easy. And when we fell in love with Star Trek, it was difficult. We had to work for it. We had to find things, right? It's like there was a certain passion and interest that had to drive us to hunt this stuff down.
Sure.
And the reason why I bring up Caden, for example, is, look, the kid loves...
Your son.
My son, Caden, that he loves, most of the Marvel movies, at least up through, Endgame. He loves Star Wars, right? He loves those things. But I kind of think that he's actually just in deep like with them. But I know for a fact that he loves Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's the fact that he just sort of knows, like, all of this squirrely stuff that I don't know. The fact that he seeks this stuff out. The fact that I didn't have to tell him that Godzilla -1 is going to be hitting theaters on December 1st. The fact that he
likes it better than you
is crazy, right? Like, and he goes out and he looks for, like, there's these action figures, and Dad, like, what's this? I mean, that is a dedication. Now, it's easier for him to love Godzilla than it was for me when I was his age.
Sure.
But it's way harder for him to love Godzilla than it is for him to love Star Wars.
Right.
Well put. By the way, this was my backup. This was the tiny TV. I don't know if you're familiar with these.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tiny TV. And it plays Star Trek on it, clips from Star Trek. And it's already gone dead, apparently. I guess I need a new battery. I was going to play you a little snippet, but it's not working right now.
I wanted to put it into one of my tricorders. And
that'd be so cool.
That be the video source for it.
Yeah. I got to replace the batteries, but it's a little little TV, and it plays clips from Star Trek on the replica of an old 19-inch television set.
It's a little really goofy toy that is awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well put. Okay, and that brings us to number one, our number one on our top 10 best Star Trek merchandise. And Darren, if you'll do the honors of revealing our number one pick.
Among the treasures that the Federation Trading Post had was a selection of records. And one of these records was something that had a basically blueprint of the Enterprise on the front with some, I believe, pens and pencils. But it had the title Inside Star Trek.
Star Trek. How did it happen? When did it start? What are the people, the things that we couldn't say on television? What are the stories which haven't been told? These are the voices of Star Trek, the way we think, some of what we think about, some of what we talk about in private. This is Gene Roddenberry, and I'll be bringing you William Shatner, DeForest Kelley, or will it be Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy? You'll have to decide where fiction leaves off and reality begins. You may find that they're both part of the other. You'll also hear from a science fiction great, Isaac Asimov, also from Spock's Vulcan father, Ambassador Sarek, plus more. Welcome to Inside Star Trek.
And it featured basically a discussion between Gene Roddenberry himself. It had clips from some of his college speeches, but it also had him sitting down with William Shatner, DeForest Kelley, with Mark Leonard. And is that it? I think that was it. But
and then Nichelle for the CD re-release recorded the wraparounds.
Right. Nichelle recorded the wraparounds. But it was really amazing because, no one really knew actually who Gene Roddenberry was. They saw his name on the front of the show, but it's through this album that I was able to start developing my Gene Roddenberry voice, because he sits there and he talks to Bill Shatner and he says, "Tell me, Bill, how much of Captain Kirk is William Shatner and vice versa?" And then, of course, Bill tries to give an answer. I asked this of Bill at one of the Ticonderoga gatherings. I asked him the same question in Roddenberry's voice that he didn't recognize. And everyone around me was trying to stop from laughing. And Shatner basically gave the same answer that he gave on the album, that, I hope that the good parts of Captain Kirk can be found in me. And I hope very few of the bad things in me are found in Captain Kirk. So
I think that the people you see on television playing leads in television series, that's what they're like. When people ask, what is so-and-so really like, the lead on a television show, what you're seeing is what you're getting.
How did Captain Kirk, the character, the strong, the usually wise commander of the vessel, how much did that influence you and your personality?
I don't think that I carried home any of the characteristics of Captain Kirk, other than, as I've just said, those characteristics were me. But the wisdom and the sagacity and the courage that Captain Kirk evidenced in the play of the week was written as fiction. And I often wish that I could be able to do that in my own personal life, but fallible me is fallible me.
It's a very it's a great album, and it just takes you sort of slightly behind the scenes, as if you're eavesdropping on these discussions, and it's really fascinating.
And Mark Leonard was in character as Sarek, right?
Yes.
It wasn't Mark. Everybody else was the actors,
right?
But he was the character. He interviewed Sarek.
It was great. And he called him Roddenberry, and he chastised him about some things. And it's really fun. If you can find it, it's great. They did re-release it on the B-side of one of the Star Trek: The Motion Picture discs back when CBS had it.
And Isaac Asimov's on it too.
That's right.
Oh my God, that's right. Yeah.
There's a track, and I want to just weigh in here and say that, to me, this album was one of the most magical things to have because it came out in 1976. But to hear, again, there was no way. I had never been to a convention to hear William Shatner speak, and to hear these actors talking to Gene Roddenberry. I mean, again, I was 9 years old and I knew who they all were, but to hear them speaking as real people was insanity. And I probably played this record 1,000 times.
Yep. It was the original Inglorious Treksperts podcast.
It sort of was.
It really kind of was. And it's truly amazing. And there's even something about the Quester tapes on the record. There's a thing called the Quester Affair. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely an incredible thing. And again, nowadays people are you can find it on YouTube. You can go listen to it on YouTube. Yeah. But the funny thing about it, it's hard again, once again, to convey. Now people would listen to it and go, what?
Yeah.
What?
Who cares?
Yeah, because there's a million different clips of these people talking. But back then, this was it.
Yeah.
It was all we had.
The only thing.
There was no existed. TV specials. There was no
electronic frontier.
That's right.
And no Lieutenant Yaw.
Because back then, Star Trek was a failed TV show that had the novelty of this weird fan cult that grew up around it. The first convention was in 1972, and this album came out 4 years later as a result of the popularity of the show going into syndication and Roddenberry doing conventions and all these things. So it's such a weird thing. And when I was a kid, to have this, to hear these voices, it was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, it was interesting because I never owned it, but I found it one day at the library. And so I took it out and listened to it over and over and over again. I had to return it. And then I would get it the next week and listen to it over and over. And I would constantly be to the point where they'd be like, don't you want to get another album? And it's like, no, I would just want this album. And I would listen to it all the time. And it's funny because that album inspired, I think, William Shatner live. He went on tour and he put out an album of live. He talks about the beginning of Star Trek: The Motion Picture and a bunch of other stories, which is similar because of the success of Inside Star Trek. And now one of the things I've always been so fascinated with that record that we made a big point of finding out the history of it when I wrote 50-Year Mission. Right. And I tracked down the producer, which was Ed Naha, who wrote the Sci-Fi Pictionary and used to write for the New York Post and wrote a lot about Star Trek at the time. So he was an A&R guy at Columbia Records. And he was a big fan of Star Trek. And he had this idea to do the spoken word thing. And he was the one who ended up going to, Roddenberry and getting him excited. He became friends with Roddenberry and convinced Gene to do it. He tells a story about how Shatner showed up hours late in tennis whites to do his segment, how they were waiting and they were just freaking out because the studio time the clock was going and going and going. And like, where the hell's Bill? And he finally shows up and like nothing's happened and does his segment of the record. But what's so cool he said it was fairly successful. And he then went on and became the A&R guy for Born to Run, Springsteen's album. So and then he was responsible for clearing all the music that went on the album that was on Pioneer One. That went into space. Even though it was going to space and chances are nobody other than aliens were ever going to hear it, they still had to do legal clearances to clear the music.
Because it's that phrase "in the known universe" that's
exactly
screwed him up.
So I was so fascinated by the whole thing, and I think he's amazed that anybody even remembers this Fakakta thing. And yet, for all of us, this was another one of those, moments in Star Trek history that inspirations, key moments, legendary pieces of merchandise that meant so much to us, that kept us on this path to Trekspertdom.
And of course, Roddenberry is the most inglorious of Treksperts.
That is for sure.
Do you know what?
That is for sure.
I've often wondered, and I've never, ever asked, well, my father's no longer with us, but I've often wondered what my parents thought of all of this. You know, like when they're walking in and listening to their 9-year-old son is listening to this particular record. Like, what did they think of a kid listening to this stuff?
Yeah.
Like my parents, you know, when you're a kid, like my father and my mother never said, so what is it about this that interests you? You know, they never delved into the psychology of it all. And like, my mom didn't understand, like, why do you have to make 12 of these? And I'm like, because there's 12 different ships. Yeah. And my mom's like, but they all look the same. I'm like, they're different. This is the.
But how would you explain it? I don't understand why we're so obsessed with this nonsense.
I mean, but as a parent, I often wondered, like, what did my parents say to other friends of theirs? Like, how are your kids? That's what, you know, parents ask one another when they.
Well, you can't use the word retarded anymore.
Well,
hey,
no.
I was very lucky to have two parents.
I was touched
that not only understood it but encouraged it.
Yeah.
Well, my parents were very encouraging. Like they were the ones that made sure they found stuff like this. Like I told you about my mom finding the Star Trek books and putting them on my shelf.
Yeah.
But they never. I mean, my interest in this stuff as a kid was really serious and extreme. Like I was seriously into all this stuff to the point where I have no idea what my parents, because we never talked about it, even to this day.
See, I was in a slightly different situation because I had my older brother, who was 6 years older than I was, who was as maniacal and crazy as any of us, maybe more so, right? Because not only was he making the uniforms and building the model kits for everybody and writing up the note cards with the oath and like watching every episode and making me watch every episode and then quizzing me on the episodes after they were done. He was doing shit like he was taking carpeting and he was making tribbles, right? Like he was doing that stuff. So I was kind of drafting off of my brother's insanity, right? And there's almost no space for me to be that insane because he hogged it all. So I just watched. I watched and I enjoyed and I occasionally played with things I wasn't allowed to play with and tried not to break them.
Right.
So my mom and dad were looking at him, not me.
Yeah. I was so lucky that my dad introduced me to this stuff. He took me to 2001 when I was 7. He took me to the Federation Trading Post. He was there at every moment. And I remember he showed me a box with his old papers from when he was a kid. And I looked through these and there were drawing after drawing of copies of the original Batman comic book cover, Superman. He drew all the Justice Society. He was a huge fan in his time, too. And he transferred that love of stuff to me. And that is his legacy that I carry with me every day.
Wow. And that, I think that answers the question we asked at the very beginning. Why does this merchandise mean so much to us? There you have it. So, and there you have the top 10 Star Trek merchandise of all time here on the Inglorious Treksperts Holiday Special. And we want to thank Mark Rivera, Peter Holmstrom for the great job they did in bringing this to air. And all of you for continuing to indulge us as we count down 10 top 10 lists. And we'll be back next week with an all new top 10 list for our continuing holiday specials. And if you have some thoughts to share, you can do so at trekspertsplus@gmail.com or on social at Twitter, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky,
MySpace,
Friendster, at Inglorious Trek and Inglorious Treksperts, where you can scream at the clouds and perhaps we'll hear you. So join us next week. And of course, you can join Rob every day at the Burnettwork on YouTube. So check him out from his observatory as he shares additional thoughts about Star Trek and the world of genre entertainment. You don't want to miss that. So until next week, on behalf of Robert Meyer Burnett, Ashley Edward Miller, Darren R. Doctorman, myself, Mark A. Altman, and Gene Roddenberry, keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course.
Come, they told me. Ba-rum-pa-pa-pum. A newborn king to see. Ba-rum-pa-pa-pum. Our finest gifts we bring. Ba-rum-pa-pum-pum. To lay before the king. Ba-rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum. So, to honor him, ba-rum-pa-pum-pum. When we come. Little baby. Ba-rum-pa-pum-pum. I'm a poor boy too. Ba-rum-pa-pum-pum. I have no gift to bring. Ba-rum-pa-pum-pum. That's fit to give our king. Ba-rum-pa-pum-pum. Rum-pa-pum-pum. Rum-pa-pum-pum. Shall I play for you? Rum-pa-pum-pum. On my drum? Mary nodded. Rum-pa-pum-pum. The ox and lamb kept time. Rum-pum-pum-pum. I played my drum for him. Rum-pum-pum. Rum-pum-pum-pum. I played my best for him. Rum-pum-pum-pum. When we come. Then he smiled at me. Rum-pum-pum-pum. Me and my drum. Rum-pum-pum-pum. 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 Me and my drum. Pa-rum-pum-pum-pum. Pa-rum-pum-pum-pum.